Hello, welcome. My name is because I'm a music lover, and hopefully you love music too. I grew up listening to vinyl albums, cassettes, even had 8 tracks in my basement. Used to put on some headphones and listen to some music. Bought CDs growing up, replaced my entire collection. You can even see today I keep all my CDs in these plastic folders, and so I do collect CDs. I like CDs. They're tangible. I do purchase MP3s. My preference is the CDs. I'm an old guy. What can I tell you? I could bring them in the car, and you're thinking, yeah, you can do MP3s in the car too. Anyway, I got this book, 1001 Classical Recordings You Must Hear Before You Die, edited by Matthew Rye. And I've been in the new age of MP3 internet, it allows everyone to participate in this, and so it's my project, to listen to all of these. But before I do that, if you get a chance to look at this, the first track or the first record, it's chronological, starts. And that's the thing, it starts in the 12th century. Well, there's a lot of music that happens before the 12th century. And I thought I'd dedicate a couple episodes, a couple weeks, to the music that happens prior to the 12th century, before we tackle the 1001 Classical Recordings by Matthew Rye. And to do so, I'd like to move over to here, The Development of Western Music, A History by K. Mary Stolba. So if we start at the beginning, music has existed from time immemorial. Archaeologists have unearthed traces of music in the most ancient civilizations. Ethnomusicologists have found it in even the most primitive tribal cultures, and scientists have claimed it is present in space. And I think that is where we're going to start. The very first sound occurred at the Big Bang, the creation of the universe, the creation of the stars, the creation of the planets. And so we can look to the harmony of the world, a realization for the ear of Johannes Kepler's astronomical data from Harmonices Mundi 1619, realized by Willie Ruff and John Rogers. Now the interesting thing is that it gives a website in the liner notes, willieruff.com, and I went to that website and I could not find when this was released. On the website, it doesn't mention when it was released in the liner notes, and on the actual CD, the print of the CD, nada. So I don't know when this was released. I remember purchasing it sometime in the 90s. So we can be confident that it was released sometime in the 90s. Now, what are we going to hear? What did these two guys, Willie Ruff and John Rogers, do? Well, you can imagine the solar system, the sun in the center, and all the planets revolving around the sun. Now, if a planet were to make a revolution around the sun, it's very, very slow. Obviously, it takes us, the Earth, 365 days. But if you sped it up, it would start to make a sound. You can now imagine a ball on the end of a string, and you whipping it around your head, and it starts to go, and if you continue to do that even faster and faster, it'll start to maintain a pitch. And so that's what these guys did. These guys said, well, let's take the astronomical data that Johannes Kepler gave us and speed up the revolution of Mercury, Venus, and Earth, and you'll get audible pitches. And so it's a simulation. These aren't actual sounds per se, but they're simulated tones. And in the liner notes it says the first you hear is Mercury, which as the innermost planet is the fastest and the highest pitched. It has a very eccentric orbit which it traverses in 88 days. Its song is therefore a fast whistle, going from the E above the piano down more than an octave to about C sharp and back in a little over a second. So you'll hear, so that's how it begins. You hear a high-pitched whistle that kind of descends and then goes back up and descends and it goes back up. And then a second pitch will come in and that's Venus. And a third pitch will come in and that's Earth. They're more circular orbits, so their pitches will stay the same. But they get lower and lower because their orbits are wider and wider. So then Mars comes in and Mars is like a pitch that's lower around here. And then Jupiter comes in that sounds like a real deep voice, as you would expect from the size of Jupiter. And then Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, those three are the slowest and they are more like clicks. So it's like a click track for the entire harmony of the planets. So I encourage you to stimulate your scientific curiosity and listen to the harmony of the world, what the planets would sound like if they revolved around the sun in an audible manner. next recordings are from the Voyager satellite. We sent out the Voyager, and it in turn sent us recordings of sounds. And what you're going to hear on these next CDs, the interaction of the solar wind and the magnetosphere of a planet, which releases charged ionic particles with a vibration frequency in an audible range. So what's pretty amazing now is that the recordings you're going to hear are sounds being emitted by the planets and the solar winds, and they are in audible hearing range. You're also going to hear sounds from a planet's magnetosphere. You're going to hear the sounds of radio waves bouncing between the planet and the inner surface of its atmosphere. You're going to hear electromagnetic field noise within space itself. You're going to hear charged particles interacting with planets, moons, and the solar wind. And lastly, you'll hear charged particle emissions from the rings of certain planets. No specific order, unfortunately. I don't know. There's only one track for each CD, so it's kind of like a greatest hits, if you will, of the space sounds. So all of that gobbledygook, what are they trying to say? Pretty much you're trying to say, as the Voyager flew by the planets, someone rolled down the window, stuck out a microphone, and recorded the sounds of the planets, and this is what you get. Enjoy. Now, I grew up believing that the entire universe of outer space was just complete silent. But now we've got recordings of sounds from space, and it's truly amazing what types of sounds can come from space. One of my favorites I call the Great Burp. And then there's electronic wailing. Something reminiscent of a flute sound. And here we have something that you can equate with feedback of electronic equipment. We've been listening to Symphonies of the Planets, recordings of space sounds by NASA, released in 1992, provided by the Voyager space probe. Correcting myself, earlier I said it was a satellite. I was mistaken. It's a space probe. We send it out with the intention to gain information, and particularly these recordings. And you have to admit that those recordings can really bring us some fantastic sounds. And when you're listening to them on the headphones for a good solid 20 minutes, it fills up your auditory kingdom with this wonderful omnipresence. And when you shut it off, silence with a big capital S. It's remarkable. It's a remarkable experience. I recommend it. My one disappointment is that they don't tell you at any point that what you're listening to. They just say overall you're listening to this, and it could be anything from a gas to an electromagnetic storm to a planet, but you don't specifically know. Now, on the other hand, there are a different set of CDs that do tell you precisely and exactly what you're listening to. For instance, let me introduce you to this CD called Uranus, which is from the NASA recordings of the Voyager space probe as it drives by Uranus. They roll down the window, stuck her microphone out, and you get this. Or take this from Saturn. It almost sounds like it could be from the soundtrack to an alien outer space movie. And one of my favorites is from the CD Miranda. Miranda is one of the moons of Uranus. It has 5 moons. And what you're going to hear is what I call the ghostly voices. Tell me this doesn't sound like ghost voices to you. Here's a really uncanny sound. It's a crescendo and a decrescendo. And it sounds a lot like what we heard from Willie Ruff as he transposed and made audible the planetary equations of Kepler. How does that happen? I really don't know how we're listening to Miranda and it sounds like the mathematical equations of Kepler. Your guess is as good as mine. The next recording you're going to hear is of the sounds of the moon Io. This is one of my favorite recordings. There's so much going on.
We must face the fact.
And just like he has to say, let's talk about the facts. Galileo discovered this particular moon, and it is named Io after one of the priestesses of Hera who became a lover of Zeus in Greek mythology. So we're sticking with the Greek mythology theme in naming this particular moon. It is slightly larger than the Earth's moon, and it is 390 million miles from the Earth. Now what we're going to hear is we're going to hear a lot of different things all at once. And it's really incredible. And I think this is going to become your favorite recording as well. They're like bell-like sounds, but not metallic bells. More like the Tibetan singing bowls that are made out of crystal, and they have this low rumbling type of a sound, boom, 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 like that. And exactly that. It reminds me of the Tibetan singing bowls. And you're also going to hear some strange noises that I can only say remind me of aquatic sounds, like dolphins. You know how like you've heard sounds of the aquarium, and you've heard dolphin sounds and killer whale sounds, like that, stuff like that. That don't sound space or science fiction. They have a distinctly aquatic sound. That's the best I can describe it. And I think that it'll probably bring images of the ocean to your mind as well. I don't believe that there is any water on Io, so again that makes it a particular mystery on how these sounds are coming to light. But I hope you enjoy this one, and sit back. And we've come to the end of our journey, and the end of our journey is planet Earth. And let me remind you that each celestial body emits a frequency, and that frequency falls within the range of human hearing. So we can hear the sounds of the planets. And how about our own planet? our own planet emits a frequency that is called the Schumann resonance, and it's about 7.83 hertz. And when it is recorded, it sounds like this. Okay, these have been recorded sounds, and we're interested in the development of Western music. So where does the music come in? So far we've explored sounds. This next recording is called Song of Earth, and it's a soundscape produced from the interaction of the solar wind with the magnetosphere of the Earth. And there's also additional synthesizer sounds that are provided by Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, which technically makes this the first space-oriented composed piece of music. Just to give you a small background, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson is a physician, musician, composer, inventor, educator, and author. How do you like that resume? He's a really nice guy. I met him. He has a website that you can go to, and he features all sorts of soundscapes that are healing. In fact, I believe, if not his particular philosophy, there is a philosophy that listening to these audio recordings of the sounds of the planets can awaken primordial consciousness within ourselves. And so maybe that's a really interesting benefit of exploring these space sounds. So, Song of the Earth, arguably the first composed piece of music that uses space sounds. Terry Riley is an American composer and performing musician. He is best known as a pioneer of the minimalist school of composition. And he is by far one of the only composers I know who really utilizes space sounds in his music. He has an album called Sun Rings, and every track utilizes space sounds as sort of a backdrop for the composed portions. And beautiful, beautiful music. We're going to listen to one track called One Earth, One People, One Love off the album Sun Rings. And what you're going to hear is you're going to hear the space sounds that we've been hearing as a floor to the string quartet that plays on top of it. It's beautiful, and I think you're gonna like it.
One Earth, one
That concludes this episode, exploring the sounds of space. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you seek out and obtain some of the CDs and give them your complete listening experience. And hopefully we'll see you again next time.